Um, First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this by WebEx, which can be quite challenging, and it's an important thing that we're all starting to come together now for these meetings remotely, and so thank you for participating. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land where we're meeting today, the Ngunnawal people. In my case, I'm in Canberra, and also people are here from all over Australia. So I hope that you can take a moment to think about the traditional custodians on the land at which we're meeting everywhere in Australia. And I'd also like to pay my respects to those Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are attending this meeting today, and to their elders, past and present. So today we're talking about some patent analytics for which we prepared using patent analytics to provide information on the COVID-19 response. We started this work because we have the capability at IP Australia and the information on technology developments that might have been helpful in the national and international response to coping with the COVID-19 pandemic. And we were very lucky that a lot of examiners who had some great ideas and thought about different aspects of patent technologies and trademarks and designs came to us with their ideas, and we were able to coalesce this into a useful resource for everybody. It's publicly available, as well as information from our research and information services team. As well as that, some people might want to know what it's like working in the hub and how we've come to do this type of work. So we've got a two-part presentation today. First of all, Jason McArthur is going to go over details related to the pandemic and our analytics, which we worked across the agency. And then Jac Frater will be talking to us about how she's found it working in the hub. Then we'll have time for questions, which will be prepared with Slido, and Jason will give you the details. So welcome and thank you, everyone. Over to you now, Jason.
All right, thanks, Kat. Yeah, as Kat mentioned, people can ask questions using Slido, and the information for the Slido today is just shown here on this slide. I'll be putting this up at the end of the presentation as well. So the code is just there, M558. So today I'm just not going to start with some background on COVID-19, as I think most people would be fully aware of what it is by now. But in my household, COVID-19 looks a little bit like this. And I think you can see the resemblance. And I've been using this as a bit of a prop when I've been talking about coronavirus and COVID-19 to my kids. But as you can see, my 8-month-old son hasn't really been paying that much attention to our conversations on good hygiene practices. So well, I need to keep educating him. What I will be talking about today is a really nice example of collaboration across 5 different sections here at IP Australia. And I'm just going to briefly begin by discussing the Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources task forces that were initially set up in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And then I'll talk about IP Australia's contribution to these task forces, with an emphasis on what and how the information was gathered, and how the information was analysed and presented. And then I'll hand over to Jac Frater, who's going to briefly talk about some of the other activities that the hub has been up to. So the DISA task forces were initially established to support government through the COVID-19 pandemic. And these include an industry capability task force, a corporate COVID response task force, and a COVID response task force, which is focusing on 5 sort of separate areas, and these include transport and freight, non-medical issues, sanitizer, triage, and medical issues. So IP Australia is in a unique position to quickly gather information on specific technology areas that are relevant to the different task forces. And IP Australia is in this unique position because we have access to large amounts of IP data and technical information, but most importantly is that we have access to in-house expertise that can be used to identify the relevant information within this data. And so this information can then be shared and used to identify relevant know-how and local knowledge, which the government can then call upon if required at any stage during the pandemic. So what the hub did was it went out and asked the different areas of the organisation for help in getting some COVID-related information together. And everyone that we approached was extremely positive and wanted to contribute as much as they were able to. And so Patents provided us with input on over 24 search strategies and actually completed 13 chemical searches for us. Trademarks and Design Group, they provided us with 6 trademark data sets and 4 design data sets. And the Research and Information Services Group provided us with a synopsis of over 50 items of MPL across 6 different technology areas. And so once the hub received all of this information, we then extracted and analysed data before preparing information briefs that were then forwarded on to the relevant task force over at DISA. So the technologies that we covered in the 6 information briefs are just listed here. We had we prepared information briefs on respiratory support devices, personal protective equipment such as face shields and respirators, personal protective equipment including surgical gowns and goggles, information briefs on the human coronavirus vaccines, repurposed drugs, and medical diagnostics. So for each of these technologies, a number of technology subcategories within each one were also identified and analysed. So as an example, for the respiratory support devices, this particular information brief covered ventilators as well as hyperbaric hoods. The information brief on facial shields and respirators covered 4 types of shields as well as respirators. The brief on gowns and goggles covered several types of gowns. The brief on the vaccines covered several types of vaccine technologies. The repurposed drugs covered 13 specific drug compounds, and the medical diagnostics brief included information on nucleotide detection assays as well as immunoassays. So the information briefs that we prepared, we tried to sort of keep into a format which we sort of followed for each brief. And so each of the information briefs contained a really brief background and a summary of the main points. And then this was followed by a series of tables that for each technology subcategory displayed, we listed the top 5 applicants based on global patent filings, the top 5 applicants with that are filing patents into Australia, the top 5 Australian applicants based on global patent filings, and where it was applicable, we also provided a list of the top trademark filers in Australia and a list of the top design owners in Australia. At the end of the brief, we also included a summary of relevant NPL and news items that the guys in RIS had provided for us. Additionally, in each of these information briefs, there was a link out to an interactive patent analytics report that allowed people to drill down into the data in more detail if they required. And so the interactive analytics reports, they were provided, the links to the interactive patent analytics reports are provided on the IP Australia website, and this is the link shown here. And while these interactive reports were designed to initially accompany the information briefs, they can also be used as standalone resources that are freely accessible by anyone who's interested in these technologies. And so I'm just going to share with you now some of the information that's included and how we can use these interactive reports. And I'm just going to do that with a series of screenshots. So this is just a screenshot of the web page where the links to the interactive reports are. And by clicking on any of these links, the report will open in Tableau Public and in a new browser window. And I'll quickly take you through one of these reports now. So this is the landing page for the interactive report on the human coronavirus vaccines. We have some background information and a brief summary of the important patent filing information for this technology. And we also have a little bit of information about how to use the visualization. And so then if you click down here on the view the patent data, we're taken to the data dashboard. And the data dashboard looks a bit like this. So on this dashboard, we have a broad summary of the whole technology area, which is just stated at the top here. We have some technology selection icons that are listed here, and I'll talk a little bit more about these in a minute. And we also have a graph displaying the patent filing activity over time. So in this particular case, you can see that for coronavirus vaccines, there's quite a large peak in 2003 and then some fairly low activity since then. If anyone's interested in what this peak of filing activity is around here, this was related to, so most of the patents being filed here are related to the development of vaccines for the prevention of SARS. There's a slight rise down here, which you can see from, say, 2013 to 2015. This is associated with the MERS outbreak of 2012, and I'd expect to see another peak further down the track around 2020, which is going to be related to COVID-19. Further down the dashboard, so you'd be scrolling down the dashboard, you'd have a map. We display a map showing the origin of the particular patent families and a list of the top applicants filing patents in this technology. And then the final feature on the dashboard is this table that can be used to browse through a list of representative patent applications that are representative of each of the families that have been filed in this technology area. And this table can also be used to link out to the full specification of a patent via this link out to eSpaceNet. So, as I mentioned earlier, the interactive reports can be used to drill down into the data in more detail. And so you can filter the data using a number of different categories. And so what I've just got labeled here is a smaller view of the data dashboard. And you can see here that we have the ability to select a specific technology. And so in this case, a specific vaccine technology. You can also select a specific location of origin. And you can also select a specific applicant. And so by selecting any of these icons or any of these countries or any of these applicant names, you're actually then filtering the data and so that you can narrow down onto a particular area of interest to you. And I'll just show you a quick example of that here. So in this particular example, we've selected our subunit vaccines as our technology filter. We've selected Australia as our country of origin filter. And what you can see here, the data has now been narrowed down. The graphs now represent what's been filtered. And you can see that we have 2 patent families that have been filed, one by IP organisers and the other by the University of Queensland. So this allows you to then quickly narrow down or filter the data to narrow it down so that you can find specific information that you might be interested in. You can then further filter the information. So if you're only interested in a particular applicant, You can then click on that particular applicant's name, and then the patent details that are displayed in this table are only those that have been well, only those that have been that have come from the University of Queensland. And then you can click on the link and go out to the full specification of that patent. Okay, so the other interactive reports are all in a similar format, and but you'll get a much better feel for the interactivity if you jump into some of them and have a bit of a play around yourself. And so these are all just available here on the IP Australian website. You don't need to download any particular software or anything like that. You can just click on it. It'll open up in a new browser, and then you can start playing and manipulating the data and having a bit of a browse through that. So you really get a much better feel for the interactivity if you can get in there and have a bit of a play yourself. Also on the web page, you can see that we have a link to the Centipede news feed, and this was developed by David Church in RIS and provides the latest COVID-19 non-patent information in a real-time type format. And so if you click on that link, we go to the Centipede page, and you can see that we have the COVID-19 information. It's been separated into 3 different streams covering technology, manufacturing, and research. And you can scroll through each of these windows, looking at the headlines, and if you find something of interest, you can then click on that, and that'll take you out to the full article. Some of the the interactive reports went live on the IP Australia website on the 7th of May. And the number of views that we've had as of last week are pretty good, ranging from 244 for our face shields and filters interactive, up to 531 for our interactives on respiratory support devices. So hopefully people are finding this data useful and are getting in there and getting amongst and having a look at the data in some detail. As I mentioned earlier, this was a collaborative effort, and with over 40 people from 5 different sections of the organisation having direct input on this work. And I just wanted to put up this slide to acknowledge their contribution and say a big thank you to everyone for their input. And so, yeah, it was quite an undertaking getting so much data coming into the hub over a short period of time. But we're very grateful for the technical expertise that we had on hand, and were able to provide us with you know, all of the input on our search strategies and provide us some raw data as well for different things. So thank you very much. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to mention that we are looking to recruit some new patent analysts into the hub, and we actually do have a job ad that is currently live in Orion now. And on that note, I'll just hand over to Jac for the last 5 to 10 minutes to give you some additional information on some of the other work that we do in the hub. So over to you, Jac.
Hi everyone, my name's Jac Frater. I'm currently a patent analyst in the Hub. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the variety of work that the Hub does and what it's like as a workplace. So the Hub does everything from the interactives that Jason just showed you to long form reports for clients investigating a topic more seriously, such as our Dose of Innovation vaccines report that you can find online at the moment. We also do the Article 15.5 landscape reports, which we send out to attorneys to help guide their clients in the potential marketability of their applications. And that's one of our big things. We really focused on clients and on supporting Australian innovation through providing access to data and analytics that may not be otherwise accessible. Most of our clients we work with are public organisations, researchers. We also do a fair amount of work for the Entrepreneurs Program run through the Department of Industry, where we're helping Australian entrepreneurs figure out the best, what their intellectual property is good and where their markets are. So it's a really interesting variety of work, and the things that some people don't know about the Hub is that we actually do quite a bit of stakeholder engagement throughout the entire process. Again, that client focus is a really big part of our core business. We are service delivery and we take a lot of pride in our work. We're a forward-facing part of the organisation, so we do our best to make sure we represent IP Australia as well as we can at every opportunity. I've only been in the Hub since the end of January, and some of the things I've had the opportunity to work on include report writing. I'm writing a long form report at the moment for an industry client, program delivery and program coordination around the Article 15 patent landscape reports, and that's been a really rewarding process, knowing that every time we turn a report around, we're helping examiners get things out the door in time, and we're also helping IP Australia's clients by providing this value add service to give them some more information and more context around the international market for their application. I've also had the opportunity to do the evidence-based briefings, so I was involved along with the rest of the Hub in the COVID work and writing briefings to get the information out the door so that we could inform the executive of exactly what they needed to know as quickly as possible. And of course, data analytics and stakeholder engagement are a really big part of the Hub's core business. It's an amazing place to work, and it's a place that really focuses on upholding IP Australia's reputation and ensuring that we are contributing the most value that we can to innovation in Australia. I highly recommend applying for the role, particularly if you are interested in dealing with clients and being more of a public-facing sort of service delivery role, which is similar but not the same as payments. Yeah, and if you have any questions, just put them in the Slido along with the ones for Jason, and we'll do our best to answer them.
All right. Thanks, Jack. And the Slido information, I'll just pop it up again, is just there. So if you go to the www Slido and enter the code M558, and then you can ask your questions there. Thanks.
While we're waiting for that to come up, I'd just like to thank you, Jason, for giving us quite a clear overview of what was involved and a bit of a measure of the scale of that work and the time frame. There were lots of people involved, and we are very grateful. And also, Jack, I think very helpful to know what it looks like from the inside, really. Thank you. My camera has gone wonky. There we go. Now, we might turn to Jason first with these questions. And I'm not sure, Jason, if you're all over this section or not, but are you happy to start off with the questions you're on?
Sure. Yep. So the first question, I think the older questions are at the bottom. So how were the 13 repurposed drug compounds selected? These drug compounds were identified in a review paper that was put out by the American Chemical Society earlier this year, and they were looking at drugs with potential therapeutic applications to treat COVID-19. And so those drug compounds were selected from that review paper. Another question is the current...
I'll just chime in regarding the repurposed drugs. They also included the drugs that are part of the World Health Organization Solidarity Study. So there was other work, other people globally who were acknowledging that these 13 compounds had strong potential as COVID therapeutics.
Thanks, Jack. The other question, the advertised position is non-ongoing. Are there any permanent positions in the hub? No, the role of the hub is to it was initially set up to give examiners some experience in other activities that are occurring in IP Australia. All of the patent analyst roles are non-ongoing, and so they're on a rotational basis, and they can range. They're usually from 12 months to 24 months, depending on your suitability and whether you want to continue in the hub. But you're initially employed in a 12-month position as an analyst, as a patent analyst. The permanent positions within the hub are the 2 EL1 positions and the EL2 positions. Okay. So what does a typical day at the hub look like? What kind of problems does an analyst encounter? Do you want that one, Jac?
Yeah, sure. So a typical day is, like all jobs, there isn't such a thing as a typical day. It really depends on what you're working on at that point in time. So a lot of the times we'll have a long form reporting process, and that will normally have an analyst assigned to it, another analyst assigned to it, normally a member of the leadership team as sort of the counterbalance to keep it on track and check things. So if you're working on that, you can be doing anything from search strategy to report writing to communicating with a client back and forth, trying to get them to tell you exactly what they're looking for. Some of the things, the bread and butter that we have are the Article 15.5 landscape reports. So they come in a fairly, stream, and they're passed out amongst everyone in the hub. Whilst working remotely, we have a daily 2:00 social catch up on VC, which is great. We get to meet people's pet chickens and follow the progress of gardens, and that's been a really valuable thing. The hub's quite a social workplace, so we're very important to support each other's mental well-being, particularly at the moment. Entrepreneurs programs come up fairly commonly. I think one of our analysts did something like 4 entrepreneurs program reports within a week or two. So it's a flow of report writing, analytics, coding, and training. There's lots of upskilling opportunities. And I think that covers a part of the analytics reports to typically a collaborative effort thing. So normally there's 1 to 2 people on a report, and then you'll pull in other people, particularly people from other areas or people who have technology expertise, come from exam to help. With the COVID things, those were all hands on deck, long lists of people just continuously improving the product so that we could get it out to industry in the best form possible.
Yep, I'll agree totally with what Jac has just said. And yeah, most analytic reports are a collaborative effort. We don't have extensive technical expertise in the hub because we're only a small unit. We do often have to call upon exam to help us out with that technical expertise, depending on the topic that we're looking into. And then within the hub, we often work collaborative on these projects to produce these reports as well. So it's a very nice collaborative environment to work in. Another question, how has the data gathered by the hub impacted DISA policy making? And I'll probably just pair this one up with have we had any feedback from the task forces? So we've had only limited feedback from the task forces. When we've sent through the information briefs, they've thanked us for supplying the data. They've just indicated that the data has looked quite interesting. A number of the briefs have been circulated to the relevant people involved in the different task forces. So hopefully they are getting looked at and getting used, but I can't really say for sure if it's had an impact on DISA policy making at the moment.
I think Kat may have something to add to that.
Thank you. I'll hop in there as well. Now, as you're aware, we worked on a variety of sections at one time for this, and I think I'd just like you to know a couple of impacts that were made. First of all, just to put that caveat on, we don't actually have transparency on DISA policy making, and it's very much confidential. So especially the more reactive policy making that was required at the beginning of the pandemic. But I can let you know that with the Goggles and Gowns project, we had some very high levels of technical interest, and we kept working with the teams on the ground here to provide more specific information on specific details. Now, we can imagine that DISA did find that useful based on the work they did with us on that. They have come back on a number of times and said that it was useful, and also partly to do with this and partly to do with other projects IP Australia has provided. The Minister specifically directed a government agency, not DISA, to use patent analytics from the Analytics Hub in the pandemic response on a particular technology that isn't listed here. And that's confidential, but it's a really good outcome for IP Australia, and just really using our experience across the agency. So thanks for understanding. I hope that puts a bit more context around the confidentiality of it.
Thanks, Kat.
I might chime in and answer the training for Tableau for generating reports. So I did a 2-day in-person training course at the beginning of the year before COVID hit. The analysts who have joined since then have had a variety of online training available for them in Tableau. And as things move forward, it'll really depend on the way COVID develops about whether that training is in person or remains online. But there is, significant proper training in using Tableau for generating reports, which is actually really interesting because I'd previously had only experience in Power BI, and so it's been really interesting seeing the different forms of that. I might throw back to Jason for the next one.
Yep. Another question is, once an analyst goes back to his or her section, can he or she apply again for another analyst position? I think once if you've spent 2 years in the Patent Analytics Hub, I think that would be your maximum. But if you've only spent a limited time in the Hub, say a 12-month stint, you may be able to apply again for another 12-month stint later on. The next question is, do you see these analytics being extended or revisited, particularly as more work is done to develop a vaccine or on, say, more effective PPE? Look, the analytics can be extended, for sure. So we can easily extend the scope of some of the searches that we've done to bring in, maybe some areas of the technology that might have been missed the first time round. In terms of, and we often do that, we often refine a search strategy. We get people to have a look at the data that we've pulled in, and we get people to, assess that, and we refine those search strategies over time. So, and it's not hard to put in an updated interactive report. But in terms of making them sort of updated, the patent information is slow to be published. So I don't expect that as these vaccine developments associated with COVID-19 are being patented as we speak, this patent information won't be made publicly available until a few years after the fact that they've been filed. So it'll be a while before we start seeing COVID-19 specific patent information in our analytics reports. Oh, yep, Kat wants to mention something here as well.
And thanks, Jason. So that was a great question about the extended or revisited, and that speaks to the industry feedback from DISA. One thing that was requested after we published these was for some specific analytics on hyperbaric hoods to support an industry collaboration that was happening. And we provided those and made them part of the interactive visualization on respiratory support devices. So yes, they are able to be extended, and in fact have been. So that was a good example. Thank you.
A couple of more questions. Jack, do you feel the skills you have learnt in the hub are transferable to other departments or other areas of the APS?
Absolutely, and I have independent verification of that. So the skills I've learned in the hub have been really fantastic and interesting, and this is actually my last week in IP Australia because I've gotten a promotion to another agency. So I can independently verify that the skills are transferable to other departments in the APS. But additionally, I think it would be very hard to find a position in the APS that doesn't value data analytics right now, particularly the ability to understand and interpret data to a broader audience and client focus. I think the Prime Minister's address to the APS last year made it really clear that we're here to serve the people of Australia, and that client focus, that focus on supporting Australians is really important, and the hub embodies that in all of its service delivery. So I definitely think that the skills you learn in the hub will stand you in good stead almost anywhere. Jason, has there been similar work done internationally? I'm certain that refers to the COVID stuff.
Yeah, look, we have been in touch with a number of other intellectual property offices, including the EPO, the UK Intellectual Property Office, and Canada. We've actually shared search strategies with the Canadian Patent Office, and we've had discussions with the EPO and with the UK Patent Offices about doing these types of COVID analytic reports. I think some reports are in the pipeline for all of these other regions, but we haven't seen anything come out as yet. All right, and that might be the end of the questions.
And I'd just like to step in and thank again everyone for attending, and thank you, Jason, for a great presentation, and Jack also for the insight into what it's like in the hub. Really, really helpful. Thank you both. Consider clapping. There we are. You can't hear it from everybody. I'll just clap.